mates. Welcome to Fox Soul's Black Report on this Thursday, December 1st, World AIDS Day. I'm Courtney Hicks.
And I'm Nicordelai Corte. We are so honored to stand right here behind this desk each day to take you on a journey across Black America and the stories that impact our people, especially on World AIDS Day.
You know we're going to bring it to you. It's our news, our views, and our voice. We begin with a developing story as one person is dead and 4 others were hurt in a shooting at Florida A&M University. The deceased was identified as a male. The victims, including a 16-year-old boy, have injuries ranging from minor to serious. Now, it all happened Wednesday at the outdoor basketball courts at the FAMU Rec Center. The school sent out a shelter-in-place alert to students for a possible active shooter, causing a lot of concern among those in the area.
It's kind of scary when, you know, we're navigating all the time. We're always moving, always on the go. You don't know where is safe, where it's not safe. So it's a little scary, a little shocking. You just have to be cautious.
FAMU's president says that based on initial reports, none of the victims appear to be students. And police say they're looking for any tips that will help in this case. Right now, it is unclear what led to the shooting.
And this comes as a new report has been released using data from the CDC that shows Black males have the highest homicide rate due to firearms-related death. The analysis was a cross-sectional study of more than 1 million gun fatalities from 1990 to 2021. Now, according to the Associated Press, young Black men in their early 20s had the highest homicide gun rates at 142 per 100,000. For Black women, the firearm-related homicides more than tripled since 2010. Researchers found that gun-related deaths have trended higher in recent years. Overall, the nation's firearm fatality rate per 100,000 fell to a low of 10.1 in 2004 and then climbed to 14.7 in 2021. Okay,
to Minneapolis now, where a massive settlement is expected for protesters after the city reached a $60,000 settlement in the 12 demonstrators who were injured during marches for the murder of George Floyd. Now, the settlement includes an injunction that bars the city from arresting, threatening to arrest, or using physical force, including chemical sprays, flashbangs, or concussion grenades and foam-tipped bullets against people who are engaging in lawful protests. Now, it also limits the officers' use of chemical agents to disperse peaceful demonstrators and requires that officers have body cameras recording and unobstructed while at protests.
Also in Minnesota, the police officer who fatally shot Black cafeteria worker Philando Castile says he was wrongly denied a teaching license. He has been pursuing a teaching career since a jury acquitted him in 2016 for a deadly traffic stop that was live streamed on Facebook. Now, the Minnesota Professional Educator Licensing and Standards Board denied Geronimo Yanez 2020 substitute teacher application because of, quotes, immoral character or conduct. But this week, the Minnesota Court of Appeals sided with Yanez in his dispute. Now, the appeals court is telling the board to reconsider the application because its reason for denial was unconstitutionally vague and to assess it based on Yanez's ability to teach, not on his record as a police officer.
Unbelievable. We were talking a bit about this upstairs before we came down. And just for a quick refresher for those who may not be as familiar with the case, because it has been some years.
So Philando Castile was licensed to carry. He was pulled over by a Minnesota police officer. He announced that he had a gun and his hands were in plain view, and that police officer shot and killed Philando Castile while his companion was sitting in the driver's seat and while there were, I think, 2 children sitting in the back seat. And so the idea that this same officer is now giving substitute teaching a try, the idea that somebody who created a really traumatic experience for Philando Castile's kids may be in the classroom teaching somebody else's kids, it may not be illegal under the law, but I think in the court of public opinion,
it's definitely not a good look.
Folks aren't feeling this at all.
Not happy about that at all. All right, former President Barack Obama will be in Georgia today campaigning for, you know it, Democratic Senator Raphael Warnock. So far, voters in Georgia have cast more than 1 million ballots ahead of the December 6th runoff between Warnock and Herschel Walker. Just a reminder for our soulmates in Georgia, today, or tomorrow rather, is the final day for early voting. That's tomorrow.
Black U.S. Representative Jim Clyburn will now have a clear path to leadership now that Representative Jim Clyburn has dropped out of this challenge. Clyburn's challenge was a bid for assistant leader, the assistant leader spot just moments before the closed-door vote. In dropping out of the race, David CICILLINE, who was given assurances from the leadership that the LGBTQ community would be represented elsewhere in the party. Now, CICILLINE, who is openly gay and chairman of the LGBTQ Equality Caucus, stood up during today's election and gave a speech about the importance of having an LGBTQ voice in leadership.
And former Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, Dr. Ben Carson, is speaking out in support of Herschel Walker, while also accusing leaders of division. Now, this week, Dr. Carson told reporters that the racist attacks from the left is an attempt to divide the black community. He said it was inevitable that former football star would receive such criticism because of the color of his skin, and that such division had been happening for centuries. Now, Carson also added that the problem was linked to the divide between liberals and conservatives across the country, with each side calling the others traitors and keeping the country from working together to actually solve problems. And let me begin our little chat with, for me, not going to dismiss Dr. Carson's track record or his legacy when it comes to the medical side of things. A trailblazer, born and raised in Detroit. The projects went from nothing to something. Definitely don't want to take that away from him. However, I think him being appointed in the former administration, it was definitely out of his wheelhouse or above his expertise grade, if you will. And on top of that, he has said some really, in my opinion, damaging things that have set us back. So I don't want to dismiss his contribution to medical science. However, on the political side of things, a bit shaky for me. Yeah, and you know, I think both things can be true. He has contributed enormously to the advancement of medical science, but he's also set us back in terms of civil rights. Even under his watch as Secretary of U.S. Housing and Urban Development, then Secretary Carson was working to erode the Fair Housing Act. He was working to erode tools like the Desperate Impact tool to help hold folks that were committing housing discrimination more accountable. And so to have him out there talking about, this supposed attempt to divide the black community, when there's plenty of people across the political spectrum that recognize the shortcomings of Herschel Walker. And we both know that folks who were appointed in that administration were definitely not as qualified as maybe they should have been.
I'm just saying.
Moving right along, black rail workers could see some position changes as the U.S. House passes a bill amid avoiding a nationwide rail strike. That would be horrible, but there's more work to be done. Lauren Blanchard has the latest.
Many House Democrats had to make a rare vote Wednesday that overstepped the unions they usually side with, a vote not all were happy about.
I'm standing with the unions, my locals and my nationals.
Still, the House approved a bill that would force the terms of a September deal negotiated by the White House, railroad management, and labor unions that guaranteed pay raises, but was later rejected by 4 of the 12 unions.
The joint resolution is passed.
Labor leaders have been fighting to add paid sick time into the deal, citing grueling work schedules.
We are allegedly so vital to the economy and we're so important that they won't even allow us to go out on strike.
But with a strike deadline looming and the economy at risk, President Biden asked Congress to step in.
Joe Amtrak, Joe Lunchbox, whatever you want to call him, he has punted this to us to deal with his colossal mistake.
Senator Bernie Sanders announced a separate measure which would provide 7 sick days for rail workers. The House approved a similar bill on Wednesday.
If your child gets sick, if your spouse gets sick and you need to take time off of work, not only will you not get paid, you actually will get reprimanded and could get fired.
All righty, so what's up next? The Senate, where both bills will need 60 votes to pass. President Biden says he wants them on his desk well before the December 6th deadline.
California is undertaking the nation's most ambitious effort to provide reparations for the economic legacy of slavery and racism. Under the new proposal, the California reparations push could give black residents hundreds of thousands of dollars. Money that human rights groups say will help black residents to finally buy a house, pay off student loans, try to build generational wealth, and more. For California, there's an estimated 1.8 million black residents who are descendants of enslaved people.
Well, I don't know if you call this story having a happy ending, but definitely an ending that is happy. He was wrongly imprisoned at the age of 16, now 24. He walks free after the discovery of evidence that proved his innocence. Shamil Capers spent 8 years in prison for a crime he always maintained he did not commit. He was accused of being the second shooter in the killing of 14-year-old honors student, a young girl who was caught in the crossfire of a gang dispute while on a city bus in Queens, Jamaica. This happened back in 2013. Now, a year after the shooting, a known gang member in the area recanted testimony that Capers was involved, making him a free man. Now, while in prison, Capers did make the best of it and finished high school, but of course missed time with his family and his daughter. And those are years, Nicordelai, that young man will never get back. I think it's commendable that he stayed motivated and encouraged to finish his high school years, as he was only 16, so maybe a sophomore or a junior when he was sent away to prison, wrongly convicted. And it's just sad in a sense that you'll never get that time back with his family and watching his daughter grow up. But like I said, happy in the sense that it ended the way it needed to end, especially with him being innocent.
Well, just thank goodness that there was somebody out there that was able to right that wrong. Mm-hmm. That the system was able to course correct. Of course, not on its own through the pressure of his attorneys and other advocates on the outside. But I think the same is true for the California reparations story, right? We're seeing not just in California, but in states and municipalities across the country. Just yesterday, we reported on what's happening in Providence, Rhode Island.
That's right.
Where there's so much afoot to address some of the historical wrongs that have been done to our community, and folks are being pretty creative about how they're going about delivering reparations. And so keep up the good work to everybody that's out there.
Still some kinks to work out, but we're definitely headed in the right direction.
Oh, so much progress.
That's right.
Well, it's December. Speaking of progress, it's December 1st, which is also World AIDS Day. The annual event is meant to raise awareness and money for the fight against AIDS around the world. Now, there's going to be several events taking place at the New York City AIDS Memorial today, but meanwhile, overnight, celebrities like Patti LaBelle hosted a World AIDS Day concert to support the efforts. She was joined by Gladys Knight to headline a free AIDS Healthcare Foundation concert at the Kennedy Center, and says it's something that is near and dear to them.
That's what I do. And my friend Gladys Knight also. We're here to speak for those who sometimes can't speak for themselves. And because of the pandemic and everything, sometimes people think that AIDS has been forgotten. Never forgotten. It's very important that we still stand up for those who are troubled with this disease.
Standing up for folks that are still troubled with the disease indeed. It's the 35th anniversary of the foundation, and their work continues to serve over 45 countries and millions of patients in the fight against AIDS and HIV.
35 years. That is amazing. And on this World's AIDS Day, we want to take a moment to honor and remember the Black trailblazers, the legends we have lost due to AIDS. Some folks, soulmates, you may or may not remember, depending on where you are chronologically. I definitely remember Eazy-E and that West Coast rap taking over. You got Willie Smith, an American fashion designer, Arthur Ashe, a celebrated tennis player, Fela Kuti, a Nigerian musician, Alvin Ailey. I used to love to see the company come to Detroit as a little girl to watch them dance. Sylvester, talking about an iconic disco representative there. He was a great entertainer. You got Howard Rollins, who you may remember from In the Heat of the Night. It's still running on TV, maybe in some of your areas. Also, Max Robinson, an American broadcast journalist and anchor who we continue to celebrate his legacy. Jermaine Stewart, responsible for still some of the wonderful songs that are the soundtrack of our life. We just talked about the passing of Irene Cara. Jean Anthony Ray, an American actor, dancer, and choreographer who was a part of that Fame family. And you can't forget about Gil Scott-Heron, an American poet whose works will always continue to be celebrated. And Nicordelai, we still have like 38 million people living with HIV/AIDS today. So it's amazing that artists like Stephanie Mills, Gladys Knight, Patti LaBelle, Diana Ross continue to champion this cause, because we don't want to forget that this still is happening, and people are still suffering. Even though we can control it a little bit better and lessen the spread, it is still here. And
the fact there's so many people that are living with HIV. I mean, once upon a time it was a death sentence when somebody learned that they had HIV or AIDS. And when I think of people like Billy Porter, who recently came out being HIV positive, living with HIV, and dare I say thriving, even with HIV in his life and career. And so what a difference research makes, what a difference
decades
raising awareness and doing the work to end stigma.
That's right.
Coming up, the families of the traveler who died of carbon monoxide in Mexico take steps to ensure justice.
Yeah, we'll have all the details on this story and more when Fox Soul's Black Report returns.